Hey, it's me, Raika. Today we're going to have a look at Daimon, the Forsaken Child from the Graveborn faction. Now, this hero wears plate-based gear, is part of the tank class, and his primary role is to provide a significant amount of damage for your teammates. So let's have a look at his skills. His ultimate skill, Soul Feast. Daimon deals 260% damage to all enemy targets. If already unlocked, the skill Bone Shield will be used against two enemies with the highest maximum health values. While Daimon is using his shield, he will suffer 35% of the damage received by his allies, but will not die as a result. Blood Shield now targets 3 enemies at the level 2 upgrade, and the level 3, the damage is increased to 300%. Now, this is his bread and butter, where most of his damage comes from this specific ability. In addition, he's extremely powerful against tank based heroes as he scales off the enemy's hit points. His next ability, Blood Shield. Daimon steals 18% from the enemy with the highest maximum health and converts it into a shield that lasts for 5 seconds. Health stolen does not kill the enemy. Once the shield has expired, its remaining shield value will be returned to the enemy as health. The level 2, 3, and 4 increase this percentage. The percentage of max health stolen from enemies is increased to 26%. So if he uses this against enemies, such as his ultimate skill, where he can use this ability against 3 enemy heroes, this is a significant amount of health that he can steal from the enemies, and he can essentially become immune to damage for a couple of seconds while using this specific ability. His next ability, Inanimate Companion. Daimon uses his doll, Stitchy, to attack enemies standing in front of him 3 times. Each attack deals 200% damage to the enemy, with the final attack causing the enemy to become stunned for 3 seconds. The level 2. After 9 seconds, Stitchy converts 100% of the damage he dealt during the previous 9 seconds into health for Daimon. After 9 seconds, Stitchy converts 150% of the health dealt during the previous 9 seconds into health for Daimon. And the level 4, damage dealt by Stitch's 3 attacks is increased to 220%. So as we can see, Daimon is the little child in the middle, and Stitchy is the doll that protects Daimon. His next ability, Forbidden Power. Daimon deals 250% damage to nearby enemy targets, but also receives 120% damage himself. Effects of this skill cannot kill Daimon. The level 2 and 3 increase this damage to 300%. And the 60 engravings, Daimon deals additional damage equal to 10% of his shield's value to the enemy. Additional damage cannot exceed 300% of Daimon's own attack rating. So let's have a look at his signature item, Soul Sunder. After using this skill, Blood Shield, while the shield is in use, Daimon temporarily gains 20% of the enemy target's attack rating and 30% of their defense. The level 10, Daimon permanently acquires the target's attack and defense rating if the enemy target dies while Daimon's Blood Shield is being used. And the level 20, after using the skill Blood Shield, while the skill is being used, Daimon temporarily gains 40% attack rating and 60% defense rating from the enemy hero. This skill cannot be stacked. And finally, the level 30, the duration of Blood Shield lasts for 7 seconds. So essentially, this increases the window where Daimon essentially can deal damage to the enemies, and essentially this allows him to gain a significant amount of defense while he has the Blood Shield active. So let's have a look at his furniture. He's 3 out of 3, Dying Wish. Enemies that have already dealt damage to Daimon receive 40% increased damage for 3 seconds. So this is a pretty significant buff, as all allies benefit from this skill. The 9 out of 9, enemies that have already dealt damage to Daimon receive 40% increased damage for 6 seconds. This skill cannot be stacked. When Daimon dies, all of his allies receive a shield that is equal to 20% of his max health for 5 seconds. So as we can see, this heal significantly revolves around his shields and his conversion of health into shields and damage into healing for Daimon. So let's have a look at how Daimon does in battle. So one of Daimon's strength is when he's fighting against enemy heroes who are tanks or enemies who have a significant amount of HP. Now, because Daimon steals a percentage of enemies' HP stats, this essentially allows him to counter the enemy's high HP values, where if your allies deal a significant amount of burst and they cannot overcome the enemies with their burst damage, Daimon can come in and help you by essentially constantly stealing the top three enemies' HP and converting it into a shield for himself. This essentially gives him an immunity for a couple of seconds where he can mitigate a massive amount of damage while dealing damage to the enemies. In addition, he can also ramp up his damage because he steals stats from the enemy such as attack and defense, which additionally allows him to steal more HP and deal more damage to the enemies. Now, as we can see here, his doll does a significant amount of damage. However, Daimon is the one who deals the most significant damage through his ultimate skill. Now, as we can see, the doll will constantly move around and attack the enemy that is closest to Daimon. And Damon's doll will also provide a significant amount of healing for Daimon. Now, Daimon doesn't usually go to the front line. However, he can be placed anywhere, either on the front line or back line, and he'll do exceptionally well. Now, this here is extremely powerful for any starter player, as this here is a significant damage dealer for the early game, as he can solo entire enemy teams by himself. And if he's placed with a couple of supports, such as Rowan over here in my team, Daimon essentially can survive long enough where he can essentially use his ultimate and start one-shotting the enemies by himself. Now, as we can see here, he needs to use his ultimate skill. So if there's an enemy hero who keeps stealing Daimon's energy, he might not be able to ramp up his damage, as this is where he starts to steal the stats from the enemy heroes. So what is the minimum investment that I would recommend into Daimon over here? I would recommend investing into his signature item. The reason why is to get his permanent stat increase, that 40% of attack rating and 60% defense rating. Now, this is a pretty significant amount of damage increase or stat increase for him, as this essentially scales all of his abilities. That means his shield, his damage, and his healing as well. In addition, I would also recommend getting his 30 out of 30 signature item, as this signature item increases the amount or the duration of the shield, and this provides a massive amount of damage reduction for Daimon. Now, in addition to this, I'll also recommend getting his 3 out of 3 furniture, as this allows him to deal more damage to the enemy targets. In addition, this also increases the amount of damage that your allies do to that specific target. Now, his 3 out of 3 only increases his damage increase for 3 seconds. So a bit more investment into him, his 9 out of 9, will allow this increase in damage to enemies to last for 6 seconds. This is a pretty significant damage increase, especially for a hero being a tank hero. Now, his engravings are not that strong for him. However, they do boost up his damage of his other abilities, especially when you increase his attack rating. This increases the damage of his other abilities and increase the scaling factor of his other damage abilities, as the blood shield, as we can see over here, scales off a certain percentage of attack rating that Daimon has. Now, and the higher attack rating that Daimon has, the greater the potential of the shields that Daimon will get. Now, the minimum investment that I would recommend into Daimon is getting his 30 signature item, his 9 furniture, and also engraving him to 30 engravings.